Hello, everyone. The mic is working. Okay, that's great. So, let me welcome you all here to my presentation. I'm so excited to talk to you about saigas. But before we start, let me show you something very unusual, someone very, very special. Yeah, so that's the special creature. This is the saiga. If you've never seen one before, you might think that it looks like an alien. Babies are my favorite, and they're very cool because they look all calm, but actually, they learn to run just one day after they're being born, and they run very fast. So this is the saiga. How many of you have seen saiga before? Okay. I love it. I love telling people about the saigas that have not seen it before. It's amazing. Okay, so today I'll tell you a story about the saiga, but also why I believe that promoting green skill is one of the best ways to protect saigas in Central Asia. My name is Ola, and I'm a part of Saiga Conservation Alliance. I'm a research and development officer at Saiga Conservation Alliance, and behind me you can see a Central Asian steppe. So the picture is actually taken 3 weeks ago when we went to a field trip to Uzbekistan. It's beautiful, and this is the place where I fell in love with the saiga for the first time 8 years ago, and the love just still keeps growing. Saigas are just so unusual. They're so different from all the other animals because for once, they used to live at the same time with woolly mammoths during the Ice Age, so long time ago, and they're still alive today. Saigas are also almost like superheroes because they can live in extreme temperatures and they can also migrate at the large, long distances. So, for example, if you imagine a travel between San Francisco and Austin, Texas, this is exactly the migratory range that the saiga does twice a year, every year. So they're pretty cool. But I would not be standing here in front of you today if everything would have been amazing with saigas. There are different threats that saigas are facing these days, and the biggest one of them is habitat loss. All across Saiga range, there are different impacts that impact the areas where saigas live. So the first thing, the first important factor is linear infrastructure. So here, for example, you see a border fence that crosses migratory routes of the saigas, so they cannot go between countries. But saigas don't care about the borders. They need to migrate. They need to go to warmer areas to have something to eat during the colder seasons. Unfortunately, such fences prevent that. There are also pipelines and railroads and similar structures that are pretty bad for the saiga. There's also industrial impact, because it just so happened that the areas where saigas exist are also rich in natural gas, for example. So there are companies extracting gas, and there is heavy machinery, constant presence of people, which chases away saigas so they are not coming back to the same areas. And obviously, there is also climate change. So, for example, we see that saigas are losing watering places every year, and that's a big factor because they live in very dry areas. There's also poaching. In the picture here behind me, you can see the saiga skulls without the horns. Saigas are poached for their horns, and the horns are traded in Central Asian countries for traditional Chinese medicine. It was the case before, it's still the case now, but we see some decrease in poaching over the last few years, which is a very good news, actually. And finally, there's also disease outbreaks. So in the recent years, we've seen multiple cases of disease spreading within saiga populations, and such outbreak can kill thousands of saigas in a span of few days. So that's a very deadly event, very unfortunate. Sadly, we saw this happening. And to put everything into perspective, I need to tell you about how the saiga populations have been changing over the last 40 years. So we started at healthy levels in around 1980s. That was a good time for the saiga, over 1 million saiga available all across the saiga range, so that was good. But then coming back to early 2000s, we lost most of the population. As Paul mentioned before, we lost 95% of the population, and the numbers were very low. This is how saiga became critically endangered, and that was very devastating times for the saigas just over 20 years ago. So saiga hold the records of being the fastest declining mammal species in the world, unfortunately. But today I'm here with the good news, because according to our latest estimates in 2023, the number of saigas is at its record high. So it's over 1.9 million saigas in the world today, which is a huge increase compared to 20 years ago. And this is an amazing thing to celebrate with you, because such a success would not be possible without your support, without the tireless work of many conservationists, individuals, community members, and organizations. So a lot of people put a lot of efforts into conserving this weird but such a unique species. So I'm very happy to celebrate this, this victory with you today. Thanks. Thank you. So to explain how we managed to bring Saiga from the brink of extinction, I'll just name some of the programs that we run. There are different things that we are doing, but first of all, we support protected areas. We support biological research to figure out where exactly Saigas are and how they migrate, how they're moving around. We support communities, so alternative livelihoods and other useful things that we can do for the community members. We also try to reduce the impact from the industry and support anti-poaching activities. But today I'll tell you about one program that I think is the most valuable of all of the things that we are doing, and this is educational programs that we are running. The big problem that we all face across the Saiga range states, and this is Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Mongolia, is the fact that there is an absolute and utter lack of environmental education. So people just don't know what conservation is, how it relates to people, how people are connected to the natural environment, and how it impacts people if animals or plants are just going to go extinct. So there is just no way for a lot of the community members to figure out like why it's important, how it relates to them. So that's a big problem, because without knowing that there is a big relationship going on between people and the natural world, people don't know that there is an issue and that they should consider their own actions, how it relates to the animals, to the saigas, to the wider ecosystems. But there are ways to change that, and the good news is that it's all in our hands. So through educational programs, we can reach a lot, we can change the mindset of people, we can make them capable, we can make them motivated and able to act according to the best interest of the environment and human communities. So our educational program is set up in a like threefold way. So we have three major areas that we target, three major target groups. So the first one is the young kids, so primary school, kindergarten sometimes, so everything that has to do with small, young children, we work with them. So we have a network of steppe wildlife clubs, and in that network, we run different events, different festivals, educational activities, sessions, interactive sessions, for example, Day of Migratory Species, and so forth. So this is the pictures from the Saiga Day 2023. We celebrated it in May of this year. Typically, communities love it, and it's very cool to have a system of steppe wildlife clubs, because they work together across the whole Saiga Range state. They can talk to each other, kids can exchange ideas, knowledge. Sometimes we organize exchange visits, we make kids camps, we invite teachers to like go through the Wildlife Academy, for example, so that there is a lot of knowledge being circulated. Our next target group is older kids. So typically those would be teenagers or even young adults. So after they've been through the steppe wildlife clubs and they participated in all of those events, what do they do next? Oftentimes the problem is that we are having such a good engagement with the younger kids, but then they leave school and we don't know they don't know how, like what they need to do, how to express their skills, what kind of project they can do to contribute, because conservation is not an official job that is very popular in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, in countries like that. So we have our young conservation leader programs and small grants that support projects that are run by young children, like teenagers, but they're already very sophisticated independent projects. So this way they can learn hands-on skills, how to run a conservation project, how to create some kind of program that makes a difference. They receive a small amount of funding, but later on they always have a chance to expand it to a bigger project and maybe to apply to real like bigger grant and so forth. So that's very great. And behind me you can see the winners of the 2023 grant recipients, and they're again like all across the range states. So we encourage people from all Saiga range countries to apply. It's also important to remember that wildlife conservation can actually become a long-term sustainable career path. And it is true that it's a very new career direction, very new kind of like industry, but there are people that are already making a lot of progress, a lot of success in this field. And I want to introduce somebody special. This is Vera, and Vera is an executive director of Association of Biodiversity of Kazakhstan. She was a recipient of award the past few years back, and she became an executive director. So she's done an amazing job in her role, and let me introduce her and her video.
So I'm taking this position of executive director of ICBK for already 8 years. I have a quite good chance to be involved with my team on the conservation project planning and developing the conservation strategy for organization that I found the most interesting. And even now, ICBK plays important role for the biodiversity conservation, not only in Kazakhstan, but also in the Central Asia. Being working in ICBK, my competence, my expertise now become more wider, and very also lucky to be involved in the project on the Saiga conservation as a part of the bigger ICBK program on the conservation and study of the steppe ecosystem in Kazakhstan. But I think one of the very important role where the Saiga Conservation Alliance in partnership with our organization play a crucial role is to build awareness around local communities, because this is something that never was a big attention from the school, from the government organization, that actually the kids from the local communities, they living in the very like altitude that it's fine to kill wildlife around them, and probably they have no idea about the value of this animal, and even maybe about some how this meet with legislation and actually is illegal actions. The collaboration with the Saiga Conservation Alliance and Small Grant Program was very much crucial to support and fund the educational type of work on the ground. Specifically, I would say it also was crucial because like every year we found it's very difficult to fundraise specifically for this type of work. I found this part of our work is really important to bring knowledge and information to the people about situations. One of the really great success that we within this work with the local communities, we tried to develop the network of the teachers, and like when you start to first work with this teacher, you provide with materials, you give them agenda, but then I think the most really exciting about this that these people on the ground, they start to be work independently. They are really become inspired about the work that the organization does. They're really already starting to create own agenda. For example, one of the teacher from the small village where we have the backpack Saiga population. This year she organized by herself. It was absolutely her idea. Debate around teachers and the children in the school about what is the future is the best for the Saiga with the growing of the number of animals. It was really great event, and I think this is really inspiring to see that the knowledge and information that you bring, it's really become to be like catalysator for the future work, and when the people start to initiate own program and the projects. And also the good things that when these teachers and the other people that we work in the local communities, they also develop and their own application for the small grant programs and develop their own project. This is really something really good to see.
So I cannot agree more with Vera. The program of small grants have been very important, and we received a lot of support and engagement from the communities. Yes, it is also true, however, that not everybody maybe decides to choose conservation as their sole career, the only thing that they decide to do in life. But the truth is that no matter what industry the person is coming from, no matter what kind of background they all have capability to contribute to conservation, to either Saiga conservation or conservation of wider ecosystems. It's all up to a person, but there are so many possibilities. And through our educational program, that would be our third target group, we target working professionals that are already established in different fields, but could still support conservation in many, many ways. So I'm talking about teachers, I'm talking about scientists, I'm talking about protected area rangers, government officials, industry workers, and so on and so forth. So we organize training for such individuals, and we want to grow this program because this way we see that the reflection of conservation values through their work. And it's very important because next time that somebody decides to run eco tours in the area, they will not disturb wildlife, but rather choose the path that is much better suited for such a route, for such a tour. Or they might educate people on the way about the saigas and other animals that are existing there. So that's just to say that such programs support local communities, they get them inspired, and they give them capabilities to act regardless of their background. With that, I want to thank all of you for supporting our programs, supporting Saiga conservation, for making Saiga a successful conservation story. I could not express how much we are happy to have your support and work with our main partners. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Oya. We have time for just a couple of questions, but can you flash the QR code on the screen, please, so you can use your phones to submit questions through the Slido webpage. To kick things off, I'm going to ask you a question, Oya, about yourself here. SCA does so much work with different groups of the society, which I really appreciate. You've got a great youth engagement program, but how did you get your start in Saiga conservation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my parents are biologists, and from the young age, I was brought to the field. I come from the city, so I'm very remote from Saiga areas and other wildlife. So I only heard stories about it, but at some point, my parents were like, okay, you should probably come to the field with us. And at first I was like, I'm hesitant, it's not very comfortable there, it's also dusty, and there are no showers. I really like my room and my soft bed, but they made me go, so I joined, and I was like, oh wow, it's actually interesting. So we went to this like very deserted area that looked like a moon surface, and I was like, wow, and there were all of those stars, and you cannot see that from the city because of the light pollution, and that made a huge impact on me. And then I heard about the saigas, and I really wanted to see one, but we didn't see one, but I knew that it lives in the area, and so I was like, okay, I want to go on another trip and maybe see saigas then. And we went on another trip, and I did not see saigas, and it became my goal to find one, so I'm still here 8 years later.
What are the natural predators of the saiga?
So in my country, in Uzbekistan, it's a wolf. The most common predators, sometimes those are foxes, and it could also be bigger predator birds like eagles. But the eagles would typically take baby saigas because the big ones are too big for them.
Okay, so the last question is, you've got to tell us about that funny nose. Why do they have this nose that makes them look like a creature out of Star Wars?
Yes, absolutely. So any guesses why? Yes? It's close. So like the features are very similar. So yes, like it serves a very similar purpose. So back in the days, well, still now actually, they really need this bigger nose to heat up the air during the cold winters because they really live in extreme temperatures, and the temperature can drop like to 0 and below. So the big trunk, the big nose helps them to warm up the air. They also run, and they live in a very dry climate. So in summer, it gets very hot and very dusty. So in summers, then the nose helps them to filter out the air when they run.
All right, that's all we have time for. If you have additional questions, please come find Oya at the break after this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.